My dear friends, have you ever noticed that the most confident women in any room are not always the loudest ones? They don't need to raise their voices to prove their worth. They don't need to argue to show their wisdom, and they don't need to shout to show their strength. Their silence speaks louder than the noise around them. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not absence. Silence is power. It is in silence that confidence finds its home. When a woman embraces silence, she carries an inner glow that no chaos can dim. Let us reflect on why confident women value silence over noise. When you look at a truly confident woman, you don't find her constantly speaking to prove who she is. You don't see her running around trying to convince others of her value. She doesn't waste her breath on arguments that do not matter. Her silence itself is the evidence of her strength. It is a power so deep that it doesn't need noise to announce itself. Think about a mountain. The mountain does not need to shout to prove it is strong. It simply stands tall and immovable. And everyone who looks at it understands its power. In the same way, silence becomes the mountain of a woman's confidence. Why is silence such a reflection of strength? Because silence requires restraint. It is easy to argue, easy to react, easy to let words flow when anger or ego takes control. But it takes immense inner discipline to pause, to hold back, to stay calm, and to let silence speak. The person who can control their tongue is far stronger than the one who cannot. A storm is loud but temporary. The earth is silent but eternal. Strength is not in noise, it is in stillness. Have you ever noticed in a heated discussion, the one who remains calm and silent often holds the most power? Everyone else may be shouting, throwing words like arrows, trying to win the argument. But the one who listens silently, who waits patiently, who does not get shaken, that person silently wins. Why? Because silence reveals confidence. It shows, I don't need to prove myself here. I know my worth, and I don't need your approval to validate it. That calm presence is stronger than any loud claim. For a woman, especially, silence becomes her crown. A confident woman doesn't need to compete with the noise of the world. She doesn't need to explain her every choice, her every decision, or her every step. She lives in the awareness that her actions will speak louder than her words ever can. And that awareness gives her a glow, a strength that no noise can ever overshadow. Her silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is filled with patience, wisdom, and depth. We often mistake silence as weakness. People say, she didn't speak up. Maybe she is scared. Maybe she is not strong enough. But in truth, it often requires far more courage to stay silent than to shout back. A confident woman knows when her silence is her shield and when her silence is her sword. She knows that silence is not surrender, it is self-mastery. And mastery over oneself is the greatest form of strength. Think of the ocean. When you look at the surface, you see waves rising, falling, crashing, making noise. But the deeper you go, the more silence you find. And in that silence lies the true power of the ocean, its depth. A woman who values silence is like that deep ocean. She may appear calm, but within her lies an ocean of strength, wisdom, and resilience. So when she chooses silence, it is not because she has nothing to say. It is because she knows she does not have to say everything. She knows that strength is not about raising her voice, it is about raising her spirit. And that inner spirit shines most brightly in the stillness of silence. There is a certain grace that comes with silence. It is like a shield that protects a woman's dignity in situations where words would only bring her down to the level of chaos. Many people believe that responding quickly, reacting instantly, and defending oneself at every moment is a sign of strength. But have you ever noticed how dignity often dissolves when anger takes over? Words spoken in haste cannot be taken back. Arguments fought in noise rarely end in peace. But a woman who values silence protects her dignity because she refuses to let unnecessary words rob her of her elegance. Imagine this: someone insults you, mocks your choices, questions your worth. Instinctively, the mind wants to strike back. But when you argue with such people, you are already handing over your peace into their hands. You are letting them dictate your emotions. A confident woman, however, understands the cost of her dignity. She knows that not every comment deserves a reply, not every critic deserves her attention, and not every battle deserves to be fought. Her silence in such moments is her greatest armor. It is not the silence of weakness, it is the silence of wisdom. By walking away or staying quiet, she says without words, "You cannot drag me into the mud, because my worth is not up for debate." Dignity is like a fine fabric. Once it is stained with anger, gossip, or uncontrolled reactions, it is hard to restore. But silence preserves it. When a woman does not stoop to the level of those who provoke her, she shows that her self-respect is stronger than her ego. And ego is what noise feeds on. Noise thrives on the desire to be right, the urge to win an argument, the hunger to have the last word. But dignity thrives on silence, patience, and restraint. Think of a queen sitting on her throne. Do you ever imagine her arguing with every subject in her kingdom? Of course not. Her dignity lies in her composure. She listens when needed, but she does not waste her energy in pointless debates. Her silence carries more authority than the loudest voices around her. That is the mark of true dignity, remaining untouchable by noise. This doesn't mean silence is always passive. Sometimes silence is the loudest statement a woman can make. When she doesn't respond to disrespect, it unsettles the other person more than words ever could. Silence can disarm arrogance, confuse aggression, and silence can starve negativity of the reaction it craves. There is an unshakable dignity in simply refusing to be dragged down. But here lies the deeper truth. Dignity is not about what the world sees, it is about what she feels inside. A woman who guards her silence guards her soul. She knows her worth does not decrease because of someone else's words. She knows her value is not decided in noisy arguments, but in the quiet confidence of her heart. And so, her silence becomes her way of protecting that sacred space within herself, where peace and self-respect live. Noise will always exist, critics, doubters, people who misunderstand or misjudge. But when a confident woman chooses silence, she stands above it all. She refuses to be pulled into the storm because her dignity is far too precious to be traded for momentary satisfaction. And that choice, to remain silent and composed, becomes her greatest strength, the kind that only a truly confident soul can carry with grace. Life today is filled with constant noise. Opinions come from every direction: family, friends, colleagues, and of course, the endless voices from social media. Everyone seems to have something to say, and everyone seems to believe their way is the only right way. In the middle of all this, it becomes so easy to lose ourselves. We begin to doubt our choices, question our path, and sometimes even silence our own inner voice just to please the outer world. But here lies the beauty of silence. It brings clarity. When a woman embraces silence, she creates space for her own thoughts to breathe, for her own soul to speak. Clarity is not found in the middle of noise. Clarity is born in stillness. Imagine muddy water stirred by stones. The more you stir it, the cloudier it becomes. But when you leave it untouched, when you allow it to settle in silence, the mud sinks and the water becomes clear. That is exactly how the mind works. In the rush of arguments, in the pressure of opinions, in the noise of distractions, the mind becomes clouded. But when a woman steps into silence, when she withdraws from the unnecessary chatter, her inner waters settle and her clarity returns. Confident women value silence because they know clarity is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Without clarity, decisions become reactive, emotional, and sometimes destructive. But in silence, they can weigh options with patience, listen to their intuition, and choose with wisdom. This is why so many great leaders, thinkers, and even saints have valued moments of solitude. Because silence opens the door to inner clarity. And once you have clarity, you no longer need to chase validation from others. Think of the sun hidden behind the clouds. The light is always there, but the clouds block its radiance. In the same way, our inner wisdom is always present, but the noise of the world covers it. Silence is the gentle wind that clears the clouds, allowing the light of clarity to shine through. A confident woman knows this. She doesn't let her decisions be dictated by the noise of the world. She listens deeply to herself in silence, and in that clarity, she discovers her strength. We often believe that answers come from outside, from advisors, from friends, from experts. But sometimes the greatest answers come when we sit quietly and ask ourselves the right questions. Silence helps us hear those answers. It is in the pause, in the stillness, that the heart whispers its truth. And when a woman trusts that voice, her decisions become unshakable. She no longer feels lost in the opinions of others, because her clarity anchors her. Have you ever seen someone react in anger only to regret it later? That happens because clarity was lost in the heat of the moment. Silence prevents this. It gives space between action and reaction, between thought and speech. That space is where clarity grows, and in that clarity lies wisdom, balance, and peace. So silence is not emptiness, it is a space of fullness. It is where confusion melts away and vision takes shape. It is where doubts fade and direction becomes clear. A confident woman knows that when the world is loud, the best way to find clarity is not to shout louder, but to turn inward, to be silent, and to listen to the wisdom that has always been within her. Respect is not something you can demand with raised voices or aggressive arguments. It is not something that comes from proving yourself endlessly in front of others. Respect is something you earn through your presence, through the way you carry yourself, and through the strength of your character. And often, silence is the most powerful way of earning that respect. When a woman chooses silence, people notice. They notice not just her words, but her energy. In a room full of people competing to be heard, her calm presence becomes magnetic. She does not need to shout for attention because her silence draws attention naturally. The quiet confidence she carries makes others pause and think before speaking. They begin to value her words more because they are not scattered, they are deliberate, meaningful, and rare. Have you ever seen a wise elder in a gathering who barely speaks? But when they do, everyone leans in to listen. That is the power of silence. The less you waste words, the more weight your words carry. The same applies to a confident woman. She doesn't fill the air with endless chatter. She speaks only when it matters, and because of that, her words command respect. People remember them. People take them seriously. Noise often weakens respect. When someone argues constantly, explains excessively, or reacts to every small thing, people stop listening. Their words lose value because they are drowned in their own noise. But silence, on the other hand, preserves dignity and builds authority. A woman who knows when to remain silent teaches others that her respect cannot be bargained with and her energy cannot be wasted on trivialities. She shows through her silence that she does not need to participate in every discussion to prove her worth. Think about nature. The tallest trees do not make noise. As they grow, they simply rise. The ocean does not need to boast of its depth. Its silence already speaks of its power. In the same way, in the silence in a woman reflects strength so profound that people cannot help but respect it. They understand that her silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It is not absence, it is power. There is also a psychological truth behind this. Human beings naturally respect what they cannot fully read or predict. Silence creates that aura of mystery. It makes others curious, cautious, and attentive. When a confident woman does not rush to respond, others wait for her. They realize that if she chooses to speak, it will be worth listening to. Her silence teaches them patience, and in that waiting, respect is cultivated. But more than external respect, silence is also about self-respect. When a woman refuses to engage in gossip, insults, or trivial arguments, she shows that her dignity matters more than winning a moment. People begin to respect her, not only for what she says, but for what she refuses to say. Her silence becomes her boundary, her protection, her standard. And those who witness it realize that she values herself highly. And so, they too learn to value her. Respect cannot be shouted into existence. It cannot be demanded through force. It is earned through conduct, composure, and confidence in the. And silence is one of the finest expressions of all three. A confident woman knows this truth deeply. That is why she doesn't fear silence. She embraces it. Because she knows her silence will command the respect that no amount of noise ever could. Many people mistake silence for emptiness. They believe that when someone is quiet, it means they have nothing to say, nothing to offer, or perhaps they are simply weak. But in reality, silence is often the fullest space one can hold. Silence is not a void. It is a container filled with wisdom, patience, and insight. When a woman chooses silence, she is not showing a lack of words. She is showing the maturity to know which words are worth speaking and which are better left unsaid. That choice itself is wisdom. Words are powerful, but too many words can dilute meaning. A wise woman understands that speaking at the wrong time or speaking too much can destroy the depth of her message. So she chooses silence not as a retreat, but as a conscious act of wisdom. She knows that not everything requires her input. Not every opinion needs her reaction, and not every conversation is worth her energy. In that restraint lies her intelligence. Think about how nature teaches us this lesson. The sky holds silence, yet contains the vastness of the stars. The earth, steady and quiet, nurtures life without making noise about it. Rivers flow with calm strength, yet they shape mountains over centuries. Wisdom, like nature, rarely makes noise. It works in silence, and in that silence, its presence becomes undeniable. Silence is also the foundation of listening. A woman who embraces silence listens more than she speaks. And because she listens, she learns, she understands, and she grows. Those who are always speaking miss the chance to absorb, but those who stay silent gain knowledge that others overlook. This is why silence is not emptiness. It is a well where wisdom gathers drop by drop. Have you ever met someone who pauses before they speak? You can almost feel the weight of their thoughtfulness. Their words come slowly, but when they arrive, they strike with clarity and meaning. That pause, that silence, is wisdom in action. It shows a mind that reflects before reacting, a heart that values peace over impulse, and a soul that understands the difference between noise and truth. Confident women are not afraid of silence because they see its richness. They don't view it as a blank space, but as a fertile ground where insight and discernment grow. Silence gives them the ability to observe human behavior more deeply, to see beyond the surface of conversations, and to understand what others are truly saying. even in what remains unspoken. This ability to read between the lines, to sense the unsaid, is wisdom born from silence. In fact, some of the most profound lessons in life are never taught through words. They are learned in silence. A sunset does not speak, yet it teaches us beauty. A storm does not argue, yet it teaches us power. A mother's silent glance can teach a child more than 1,000 lectures. Silence carries wisdom that words sometimes cannot express. So when a confident woman chooses silence, she is not empty. She is full of reflection, full of understanding, full of knowledge gathered, not from endless talking, but from patient listening and careful observation. Her silence is her wisdom, and that wisdom becomes her guide in making choices, in building relationships, and in living a life of depth and meaning. One of the most precious resources we all have is energy, not just physical energy, but mental, emotional, and spiritual energy. How we spend that energy shapes the quality of our lives. Many people waste their energy in constant arguments, endless explanations, unnecessary gossip, or trying to convince others who will never truly understand them. At the end of the day, they feel drained, exhausted, and depleted, not because they worked hard on their goals, but because they poured their energy into noise. A confident woman knows better. She knows that silence saves energy, and so she values it deeply. Every word spoken requires energy. Every argument drains peace. Every attempt to win approval from others consumes emotional strength. But silence is different. It conserves energy. It keeps her strength intact for what truly matters. By choosing silence, a confident woman does not waste herself on battles that bring no growth. Instead, she channels her energy into building her dreams, nurturing her relationships, and strengthening her inner world. She realizes that every time she refuses to engage in negativity, she has saving power that can be invested in something far greater. Think about a mobile phone battery. If you open too many apps at once, if you allow notifications to keep flashing, the battery drains quickly. But when you turn off what is unnecessary, the phone lasts longer and performs better. Our mind and spirit are no different. Arguments, gossip, endless reactions. These are the unnecessary apps running in the background of life. Silence is like closing those apps. It conserves energy so that we can use it for what is meaningful. Confident women understand that they don't need to fight every battle. They don't need to respond to every critic. They don't need to justify their every action. That silence is not avoidance. It is wisdom, because they know where their energy belongs. They would rather pour it into creating, growing, and uplifting than into explaining, arguing, or proving. Silence also saves emotional energy. When a person argues, emotions often flare. Anger, frustration, irritation. These emotions leave scars inside even after the argument ends. But when a woman chooses silence, she is protecting her peace. She is refusing to let someone else control her emotional state. This is why silence is such a powerful act of self-care. It keeps her energy balanced, and her spirit strong. And silence saves mental energy too. When one engages in constant noise, the mind becomes cluttered with unnecessary words and conflicts. But silence keeps the mind clear, focused, and sharp. It prevents overthinking about things that don't matter, and it creates space for creativity and problem solving. With that preserved energy, a confident woman is able to move forward with clarity and purpose, while others remain stuck in noise. Even in relationships, silence can save energy. Instead of arguing endlessly, sometimes silence is the answer that prevents further damage. It allows both sides to cool down, to reflect, to find peace. And in that quiet, the energy of love and understanding has a chance to grow again. This is why silence is not just a habit. It is a strategy. It is the way a confident woman protects her most valuable resource, her energy. She understands that not everything deserves a reaction, not every comment needs an answer, and not every provocation deserves her attention. Her silence is her way of saying, I choose where my energy flows, and I will not waste it on what does not matter. There is something captivating about a woman who doesn't reveal everything at once. In a world where everyone is trying to be seen, heard, and noticed, silence becomes her secret power. She doesn't feel the need to announce every detail of her life, nor does she rush to explain herself to everyone. Her silence creates mystery, and mystery creates value. People lean in, people wonder, people respect her more, because they realize there is depth within her that cannot be easily understood. Mystery is not about hiding. It is about choosing carefully what to reveal. When a woman embraces silence, she is not shutting people out. She is simply refusing to put herself on display for the world's judgment. She knows that the less she says, the more people pay attention when she finally speaks. Her silence builds anticipation, and anticipation makes her presence more powerful. Think of a book with every chapter summarized on the first page. Would you still feel curious enough to read it? Of course not. The beauty of a story lies in its unfolding. In the same way, a woman who shares everything without pause loses the richness of mystery. But when she is silent about certain things, her struggles, her dreams, her next steps, she creates an air of intrigue. People want to know more, but they can't quite figure her out. And that is the beauty of mystery. Mystery also commands respect because it sets boundaries. When a woman does not reveal all her emotions or thoughts, she teaches others that they cannot have unlimited access to her inner world. She shows that some parts of her life are sacred, private, and not open for discussion. This boundary builds value. Just as rare jewels are kept locked away and not placed in the open market, a woman's silence guards the priceless treasures of her heart. And the world respects what is guarded more than what is freely scattered. There is also power in unpredictability. Noise makes people predictable. If someone reacts to everything, everyone knows what to expect from them. But silence keeps others guessing. When a woman remains quiet in moments Where others expect noise, she unsettles them. They don't know what she is thinking, what she will do next, or how she will respond. And that uncertainty gives her a silent authority. She controls the situation not with words, but with her composed silence. History and literature are full of examples of figures who held power not because they spoke the most, but because they spoke the least. Their silence made people curious, and their rare words carried tremendous weight. Similarly, a confident woman understands that she doesn't have to narrate every detail of her life to prove her existence. She lets her silence speak for her, and in doing so, she preserves her mystery. Mystery also nurtures her inner peace. By not explaining everything to everyone, she frees herself from the burden of being understood all the time. She accepts that not everyone needs to know her story. Not everyone deserves access to her thoughts. And not everyone has earned the right to her truth. That quiet choice makes her life lighter and her energy stronger. Silence, then, is not emptiness, but a veil of mystery. And behind that veil lies depth, strength, and wisdom that others can sense, but not fully grasp. A woman who knows this becomes unforgettable, not because she shouts the loudest, but because her silence leaves people wondering long after she has walked away. Self-control is one of the highest forms of strength. It is not about controlling the world around us, but about mastering ourselves, our thoughts, our words, and our reactions. And silence is the practice ground where this mastery is built. A confident woman understands this truth. She knows that silence is not just about staying quiet, it is about holding power within. By choosing silence instead of reacting impulsively, she demonstrates self-control that few can match. Words are like arrows. Once released, they cannot be taken back. In moments of anger or frustration, it is so easy to let words fly, only to regret them later. But silence gives her the power to pause, to breathe, and to decide whether the words are worth speaking at all. This pause is the essence of self-control. It shows that she is not a slave to her emotions, but their master. Think of a river during the rainy season. When it floods without control, it destroys everything in its path. But when guided and contained, that same river gives life, nourishes fields, and sustains generations. Our emotions are like that river. If we let them flow wildly through noise, they can harm relationships, reputations, and even our own peace of mind. But when we hold them with silence, we channel their strength productively. Silence builds the dam of self-control that prevents the flood of impulsive reactions. Self-control also brings dignity. Imagine someone insulting or provoking you in public. Most people react instantly, their anger spilling out in front of everyone. But the one who remains silent, composed, and calm commands respect. People watching know that silence in that moment required immense strength. The provoker may appear louder, but the silent one appears stronger. That restraint is the hallmark of true confidence. Silence also trains the mind to detach from ego. So often, we speak not because it is necessary, but because our ego feels the need to be heard, to be right, to have the last word. But when a woman chooses silence, she breaks free from that chain. She says, without words, I am not controlled by the need to prove myself to you. That discipline, resisting the pull of ego, is one of the highest forms of self-control. There is also peace in self-control. How many conflicts in families, friendships, and workplaces arise simply because someone could not hold their tongue. Noise feeds conflict, but silence prevents it. When a woman controls herself enough to stay silent, instead of escalating the fire, she not only protects her own peace, but also prevents unnecessary damage to others. In her silence lies the wisdom to preserve harmony. Silence is not suppression. It is not about burying feelings or pretending they don't exist. It is about channeling them wisely. A confident woman may feel anger, hurt, or disappointment, but instead of throwing those emotions into the world recklessly, she sits with them in silence. She allows them to cool, to settle, and only then decides whether they deserve words. This ability to pause transforms emotion into insight and reaction into response. That transformation is what self-control truly means. In the end, self-control is a quiet power. It doesn't seek attention, but it changes everything. A woman who has mastered silence has mastered herself. And in mastering herself, she has already achieved what many spend a lifetime chasing. Her silence becomes her crown of discipline, her shield of strength, and her quiet proof that the greatest victories are often the ones won within.